Hi, I'm Ross, Lifetime Natural Bodybuilder, and this is another arm training session. So the exercise list is in the description box below, so if you just want to shoot to one particular exercise, then just click on the timestamp. I'll provide a brief insight into the exercise, why I chose it, and some tips that can maybe help you perform the exercise effectively. Arms are a really important body part to train. They're often overlooked, unfortunately. It can make a massive difference in your physique, and doing 3 sets of bis and tries once a week for most people isn't going to cut it. You need to advocate enough time. So a lot of the problem with arm training is that it's always at the end of the full body session or the push-pull session where people are generally tired. They don't really want to be spending too much more time in the gym after the heavy compound, so it's often a body part that gets neglected, and that's really at the detriment of the trainee's physique. So you have to make sure that you spare enough time over the course of a week to train your arms adequately, sometimes even requiring more sets than some of your larger muscle groups. So for me, I train arms twice a week. The first session, as I mentioned in my last video, is a structured session where I focus on improving my strength on 2 main lifts as well as forearms, so dumbbell curl and overhead extensions. And then the second day, which is what you're watching here, is more varied in approach, so I might even repeat the first exercises. Usually I will just do something different and try and add in a good number of sets over the course of a workout, get a good pump, varying it up between heavier weights, lower reps, and lighter weights, higher reps. So the first 2 exercises are done in superset fashion. Supersets are great for arms. I think they save time. You get a really good overall arm pump. And some of the exercises actually feel better after you've trained the opposing muscle. The elbow just feels a lot looser, so I think it can actually help with performance on some of these exercises, warming up the opposing muscle first. So yeah, the first exercise, barbell curl and overhead extensions. Overhead extensions not overly strict. It's like a hybrid between a press and a pure overhead extension, but I go pretty heavy, 40, 50 and 60 kilos. This is 60 here. I really like it. My triceps feel really pumped after this one, and I perform this exercise immediately after bicep curl. And again, the same weight was used on the curl, 40, 50 and then 60 kilos, and then I drop back to 40k for another couple of sets. And of course at that point the weight feels a lot lighter, so I'm able to do more volume. That's something to bear in mind as well. After your ramp up sets, after your kind of peak set, take the weight back down again and do a little bit more work on the moderate weight, and it's going to feel a lot easier than when you first started to ramp up, because you're already warmed up, the joints are nice and comfortable, and generally the mind to muscle connection is a lot better. I honestly actually think one of the problems with arm training is that people are too conscious on form and waste too much time and energy trying to keep the form absolutely perfect. Of course, form is very important. You should always keep it as tight as you can. But some exercises will allow for a little bit of body language, and this can sometimes help with increasing the intensity of the movement. So you can see here my seated curls. It's obviously a fairly strict movement. I'm sitting down, but there's a little bit of movement in my upper torso, and sometimes I see people train, they're so obsessed with staying completely rigid that they're not really able to train the arms to the kind of intensity that you would otherwise be able to get to, because you're subconsciously thinking about that all the time. So here I'm doing triples, which is a really nice exercise for bicep. So I do 3 on the right, 3 on the left, 3 times, so 9 reps overall, and I just feel the tension is slightly better when you do more reps on one side rather than swapping each rep. I feel it more in my biceps rather than my forearms and hands. Then the Latin dumbbell extensions, really nice exercises. You can see here that I'm just twisting my wrist outwards to allow the dumbbell to drop below the shoulder. If you don't manipulate your wrist like that, the base of the dumbbell will hit the front of the delt, and it will really reduce your range of motion, so bear that in mind when you perform the exercise. Both of these are at 20 kilos. And again, superset fashion, so I perform the curls straight into extensions, 3 sets each, more or less to, or as close to failure, if not failure, on every set. So the next exercise is the dumbbell preacher curl. The effectiveness of this exercise really depends on the setup of the bench, the angle of the pad. Some of the pads are just too flat, they're not vertical enough, and really almost a waste of time, to be honest. they force your arm into a very uncomfortable position if you don't manipulate your torso around the preacher bench. As you can see here, I'm actually almost standing up as I come down with the weight. And this allows me to get a better stretch without putting too much tension on my elbow, because if you put all that weight on a straight arm when it's not completely vertical, you know, it's hanging out maybe at 30 degrees, the stress on your elbow joint is absolutely huge. Whereas if it's vertical, it just feels more comfortable. You feel it on the biceps, not so much the elbow joint. So that's something also to bear in mind. Sometimes you might even need to do preacher curls reversed, because the pad is, they just get the pad position wrong all the time. You know, the people that make these machines in these commercial gyms, they just don't train, they don't understand how the machine should be set up. Unfortunately, you might have to play around with the angle and do it reverse sometimes, you know, hands outside the bench. This is just from a different angle here, really trying to keep the intensity quite high on all the sets. And you can see that as I move towards the end of the set, I actually use my opposite arm to help spot the reps up, so I can achieve my target rep. It's a good technique to use, especially on the weaker arm, and for me, my left is definitely weaker on the preacher curl. For biceps, the difference between right and left will sometimes be more noticeable than, you know, your pec or your lats or quads. For me and for many of the clients I've trained over the years, it's definitely more noticeable, the difference between right arm and left arm strength. So you really don't want to let reps go to waste, and you always want to try and match your strong arm. So I would start on the strong arm, let's say get 7 reps, and then on the left I would do as many as you can, maybe 5, and then just spot the remaining reps with the non-working arm. So you might, you know, squeeze in another 2 to match 7. And that way you're always at least trying to do the same amount of reps on both sides. Now if you start on the left, or your weaker arm, whatever that may be, you're always hindering your strong arm. You know, it just kind of defeats the purpose of training, really. So you're always trying to catch up with your weaker arm, basically. And if you have the spot to do that, then so be it. And sometimes actually I've even added in an extra set on the left side for biceps, shoulders, you know, slightly weaker areas. So that's something maybe you could consider. So the last exercise here, bar push down, straight bar. With most of these bars, the width is extremely narrow, so it can be quite uncomfortable on the push downs, and especially the curls. So I hold right on the very edge, sometimes little finger almost off the edge of it, and I use the belt to weigh me down. So I've got 15k on the belt. It just makes the push downs a lot easier, so I can lift more weight, more intensity, bigger triceps. It's quite simple. You don't want to let something else hinder your ability to train with maximal intensity. So if you have to use weight to hold you down these push downs, then it makes sense, really. So you can just, you know, train heavier. The weight won't pull you up as you come up from the locked out position. So did a couple of sets on this, couple of working sets. The last set I chose to use a drop set. So I think I got 90k on the cable machine, then I drop it to 75. I only drop slightly, and I keep the reps, you know, maybe 60 to 100% of the reps that I did on that first set. And I think that's very important to remember on drop sets. I see a lot of times people might do, for example, 90k on the push downs and then drop it to like 50 and then 25. It's just senseless. You're not going to really, you know, provide the stimulus that you want. Training has to be specific, and I think that's you know, really important in the drop sets. You don't drop too low. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you did, then please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to see more true natural bodybuilding videos, and check out my website. The link is in the description box below. Sign up to my newsletter as well. It's completely free for all bodybuilding stuff that's emailed over to you once per month. Thank you for watching again, and stay strong.